Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Batman Be Vlogged, the weekly vlog series where I review an episode of Batman Beyond after watching it for the very first time. We have another two-parter to look at today. In fact, we have the last two-parter we will be looking at in this series. Today, we are looking at episodes 49 and 50, Curse of the Kobra. From a story by Rich Fogel, Part 1 was written by Rich Fogel, and Part 2 was written by Stan Berkowitz. Part 1 was directed by James Tucker, and Part 2 was directed by Dan Reba. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place because I do these unscripted, and I may decide to talk about spoilers. So if you do not wish to be spoiled, then this is your one chance to pause the video, go watch the episode, or in this case episodes in question, and then come back and resume. And I honestly don't know how I feel about Curse of the Kobra. I think I lean towards liking it, but this is a really bizarre episode. I feel like it's going for camp, like it's going for humor, but if that's the case, it's kind of hampered by how straight it's trying to play it. Like this, because this is a really goofy episode, if I'm being honest. So the main, as the title implies, the main antagonist of this episode is once again Kobra, the terrorist organization Terry last faced in season 2 in an episode whose name I'm blanking on, apologies. But yeah, we've gone from snake-themed terrorists to full-on cult. It's bizarre. Like, in that episode I last reviewed, I kind of made the joke that Terry was fighting G.I. Joe's terrorists, and now with the whole cult angle, I feel like that comparison is even more prevalent because the way they're acting is so goofy. Anyway, over the course of the first episode, certainly, Kobra steals a thermal bomb, it's called, and ancient dinosaur DNA. I'm not going to even question how they got that because this is something sci-fi loves to do when they do sort of like splicing tales or anything involving like that. DNA degrades. DNA degrades extremely quickly. Like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of blanking, but yeah, that's the major thing. Like, DNA degrades extraordinarily quickly, but you see these science fiction tales that always come up with ways to go, oh, DNA is actually preserved enough that we can use it. It's like, no, the way you're talking about it, the way you've talked about acquiring it, the DNA, I should say in air quotes, you've acquired isn't viable. Like, there are some workarounds that could feasibly be realistic, like Jurassic Park is the big go-to, especially in this comparison because they are acquiring dinosaur DNA, but as is, just, and this episode doesn't even go into how they got it. They just stole it from a scientist who works at a museum. In that case, how did the scientist get it? I am spending way too long on this plot point. Anyway, during his encounter with Kobra, Terry kind of fails to stop them, and he takes it really hard. So Bruce sends him to a dojo run by an old friend of his named Kairi Tanaga to improve his martial arts training. I really like Kairi. She's a fun character. I like her dynamic with Bruce. I like her dynamic with Terry. We unfortunately don't get a lot of it. We just get like maybe one or two key scenes, which is really unfortunate because Kairi plays a huge role at the end of this episode, at the end of part 2, I should say. And it feels like she only exists to, succeed in the objective of this story and die, because that's what happens. Kairi kind of gives her life saving Terry and Max. I'll get more onto from what in a second. But, and yeah, unfortunately, just the way this episode plays out with the lack of focus it gives her, like, it introduces her, we get a scene or two with her, and then, at the end, she shows up as a ninja to help Terry, and she dies, fighting the villains, saving Terry and Max. Like, it feels like that's her only purpose in this episode. Anyway, also at Kairi's dojo is another student named Xander, who Terry kind of attempts to strike a friendship with. It feels like the episode is trying to imply it's a little more successful than it actually is. Look, I'm going to be honest. Over the course of Batman Beyond, we have had 3 two-parters, and this is the weakest one. Again, it's because of its goofier nature, I do enjoy it for that. Like, the fact it's taking everything so seriously and completely disregarding just how utterly silly this entire premise is. I like it for that, but it lacks the strong narrative of either Rebirth or The Call. This episode does not feel like it is this two-parter does not feel like it is using its time well. Like, let's use The Call because I remember it a little better. Part 1 kind of introduced the setup and the situation, and it... I forgot to turn off my phone again. Anyway, episode 1 of The Call, as an example, used episode 1 to really set up the situation, what was going on, ramp up the mystery and the tension until we got the surprise twist, the villain reveal. And then episode 2 was the payoff and the climax and the resolution to that. Here, there are plot points that are moving so fast in both episodes. It's kind of meandering all over the place. Like, there are times you feel like the runtime of the episode could be used in better places, like trying to establish Xander as a character, because it turns out Xander is the leader of Kobra, which was kind of fairly obvious. Like, I feel like they could have been more ambiguous because he is drawn really evil. And there's this wonderful moment where in episode 1 where Terry tries to bond with Xander, and they sneak out of the dojo, and Terry takes Xander to a pizzeria where he meets Max, and that episode, I'm sorry, that scene kind of ends with a run-in with the Jokers and Xander's guardians, handlers, picking him up so he can take over as Kobra. And then also I should end with this, just to get to my point. Part 1 ends with Xander kidnapping Max. Earlier in that same scene in the pizzeria in the arcade, Xander and Max play a combat video game, sort of a Tekken or a Soul Calibur type of game, and Max beats him. And Xander is a little incensed at this because he's never lost before. And then, as I said, part 1 ends with Xander kidnapping Max, because we learn in part 2 he wants Max to be his queen. And that's what I'm saying about how this episode is not using its runtime. Until we get the reveal, there were no seeds of this planted anywhere. And so when we learn what's going on, it feels like it's just come out of nowhere. And then we also get a bit of Kobra's plan. They are splicing their members, cultists, whatever you want to call them, with the dinosaur DNA to turn them into human dinosaur hybrids. And then they're going to release the thermal bomb they stole to raise the temperature of the Earth, because as reptilians now, they'd be cold-blooded. So the higher temperatures would be ideal for the human dinosaur hybrids and wipe out the human race. Again, this episode is absolutely bizarre, but it never leans into the absurdity. And the problem is, it's playing it so straight. You know what? Actually, now that I talk about this out loud, this has the same problem that Batman Forever does. Like, when we talk about the Burton Schumacher movies, people generally like Batman and Batman Returns. Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are a little less light, so to speak, but like, I've seen people, myself included, like Batman and Robin just for how utterly goofy it is. I've even seen people compare it to the Adam West Show, and I do like it in that comparison. And me and my friend Joey, we were kind of talking about this. We don't like Batman Forever. Again, just in this comparison, me and my friend Joey. because it is obviously starting to lean more towards camp, more towards being silly and goofy. The problem is it's still trying to take itself seriously, and I feel like Curse of the Cobra is doing the same thing. And I feel like that's a perfect way to sum this up because I can't think of anything else to say. Curse of the Cobra is utterly bizarre. It's absolutely silly, but it doesn't seem to know what it is. And because it doesn't seem to know what it is, it's tonally very confusing, as well as just, again, not really using its runtime as a two-parter to the fullest. But those are just my thoughts on Curse of the Cobra. What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. And guys, if you do not follow me on social media, I want to let you know right now, before I do my usual wrap-up stuff, I am extending Batman Be Vlogged by one additional episode. So we have 4 episodes left. The final 2 episodes of Batman Beyond, and then Return of the Joker, which was the original finale. And then one more thing. If you're familiar with the Bruce Timm verse, you already know what that one more thing is, so I won't say it here. I'll kind of surprise you guys. But yeah, we are so close to done. Anyway, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my socials, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time for the penultimate episode of Batman Beyond.